Welcome to This Is My Why podcast. My name is Arthy Sivabalan, and I look forward to taking you on a journey, talking to other entrepreneurs, creators, and just discussing what their journey has been and what their why is.
Walk us through your life and background and how it made you who you are today.
My background is I'm Tamil from Sri Lanka. I was born in Sri Lanka, actually, and then the Civil War broke out. My parents had to leave when I was 6 months old. We went to Germany and ended up settling in Canada after 6 years in Germany. So I'm currently in Canada, but the US is my second home right now. So that's a little bit on my journey of background. So coming to Canada was a very crucial time for me because I was 6 years old and I didn't know the language. I knew Dutch. And so coming here and going to kindergarten, it was all about kind of understanding how to learn this new language. We spoke Tamil at home, so it wasn't easy to pick up the English and like learn that quickly. So I spent a lot of time doing that, and it was just a really interesting time because I was in grade 1, and most kids were friends from preschool, like senior kindergarten, junior kindergarten. So I kind of just was thrown in the mix. I remember actually very vividly, for lunch one time my mom packed me her version of fried rice, and I remember everybody kind of looking at my food like, what is this girl eating? Because it was yellow rice, and just kind of not feeling comfortable. And yeah, it was just a really, looking back now, an interesting time. So that really stands out in my mind. And then we moved around quite a bit because we were, just trying to get settled in. My parents were growing with the situation. Both of them worked, labor jobs. And then my mom also went to school to learn English to kind of better herself and apply for better jobs. And so I was really around a lot of family. We lived in a house with, I think, over 20 people, and it was the best because I was the only kid. So I had a lot of aunts and uncles, very spoiled, got my way. So it was really cool because I had all this unconditional love at home, and then I would go to school where it was almost like I didn't fit in and I didn't feel like I belonged. And I don't think I understood that at that time, actually, but I just kind of went with it, and I would try to get out of going to school even then. I remember my uncles would negotiate candies with me to try to get me to go. And so I just remember that being such a like joyful part of my childhood, because even though like my parents worked a lot, like they always made time for me. My mom was really big on, cooking home cooked meals. We would kind of all gather in the kitchen, help her, and like we'd all eat together. So it was a really cool vibe now that I think back. So I grew up like that, and then we moved. So I went to a different school in grade 3, which again is not something, ideal for any kid. And then you have the whole, language and all this other stuff thrown into the mix. And I was an only child. And so it was interesting. I had really no one to kind of like share these things with. My cousins came to Canada actually shortly after. And so I was really, really close with them. They were very close in age to me. And so I felt like I was one of their siblings. And so we grew up together very close and helped each other through that time. And it was a different time, there was a lot of racism, just a lot of adversity. I just remember though, the second school I went to, I was very good friends with a really good group of, people. And I still keep in touch with some of them actually. And it reminds me that, that kind of transitioned me through that journey. Then we moved again. We settled into our home that we stayed at for a while. And that's when things changed for me because, throughout this like shift of different places, I never really saw or like kind of interacted with people from my background except for my family. And then I went to high school and I met so many people that were Tamil, and I instantly just like was in awe and wanted to just fit in so bad. You feel a sense of belonging, of wow, like, this person speaks my language, understands the food and just culture and like so many things. And it was such good times. And that really kind of, I think, helped me find my footing. There was, don't get me wrong, difficult times, but I think, that was throughout. And I'm sure kids of today are experiencing that in different ways. But it made me who I am. And that sense of belonging kind of was tied in with a very strict upbringing.
Can you share some background about your upbringing and early life experiences?
So I wasn't really allowed to do anything. My dad was very, very strict, and they were very protective, rightfully so. They came to a new country and they wanted to make sure I wasn't, hanging out with the wrong crowds, doing the wrong things. And I know their intentions were pure. And as a mom now, I completely relate to it. But, as a teenager, you're not thinking that. So yeah, I wasn't gonna say that I'm troublesome, but I definitely, did what I wanted to do against their wishes most times, and thankfully nothing, so extreme, like just minor things here and there. But yeah, and that took me through my high school days. During this time period, I was graced with a brother. So I should kind of touch on that actually. When we lived in Germany, my mom lost a baby. I was 3 years old and I wanted to say bye to my dad, who was going to go work at the time at a farm. And it was just something I always did. I always walked outside and said bye to him. And in Germany, you live in these small low rises, and there's tons of stairs. There's no elevators. And so my mom, who's 9 months pregnant at this time, I'm saying to her, I want to go say bye to my dad. And she took me, and we didn't realize somebody had mopped the stairs, and she slipped and fell and lost the baby. And I guess indirectly, I always kind of felt like that was my fault. And then later, a couple years down the road, she had another miscarriage. And, I think I knew the first baby was supposed to be a boy, so I always wanted a brother. So I would constantly pray for a brother. I remember, like, for many years. And then 10 years later, my brother was born. And he's a very pivotal part of my life to this day. Very involved. We do a lot of things together, business-wise, family-wise. So definitely have to shout him out. So he was born and life changed. It became more joyous because I was able to share with somebody. I felt like we have a 10-year gap, so it's a very like different relationship dynamic, but it's something I very much treasure.
What were your early career aspirations and what did you end up doing?
This was kind of like that time in my life where I didn't know what I wanted to do in school. I changed careers so many times in my mind. I'm a Leo, so that doesn't help because I want to do everything. But yeah, I remember I wanted to be a doctor, and then I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I wanted to be a singer. Like and I can't sing. So like I wanted to do it all. And I wasn't good at math. Like I'm not good at math. But yeah, so I kind of, fell on this thing where in high school, to get into certain like courses, you needed math. And so I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do business. As I mentioned, I'm Tamil. We're huge into numerology. So I'm a number 5. And growing up, everybody, when they would find out I'm a number 5, they would be like, you're going to be a businesswoman. You're going to be a businesswoman. And I don't know if that played a part subconsciously, but it was always kind of there. So when I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I, looking back, I had OAC, so that's grade 13. It's not even available anymore, but that's not a lot of time. And you don't even know like what you want to do. And I remember being like, and you kind of have to decide in like grade 11 because you got to take the courses accordingly. And I'm like, I'm going to do business because everyone says I should be good at it. And so that's naturally what I did. And thank you to my cousin who got me through all the math courses I needed to go through because that was oh my God, can't even begin to describe. I remember calculus and like 3 a.m. like study sessions because it was that intense for me. So yeah, there's that. But we got through it, and I ended up going to university for business, and yeah, it was interesting. You go to university, and my parents became all of a sudden really chill. And then, so you go from this extreme of being like super reserved because you're not allowed to do anything to like all this freedom. And I didn't know what to do with it. So my first year, I got a letter saying you were going to be put on academic probation if you don't get your act together. And that was a real good wake up call. So that did that for me. And I did business, and I don't know if it's being the eldest and, seeing your parents work so hard. Like, I just always told myself I want to never ask my parents for any money or help. And I remember when I turned 16, I got a job at Centennial College, which is a college in Toronto. It was an orientation specialist. It was hilarious because I was giving orientation tours to people who got into college and I was 16. So it made no sense to me, but it was so much fun. It was the start to the understanding that you have to work hard. And I learned that with my dad. He always kind of drilled that in. And I liked it. I loved hard work. I loved feeling like I was putting in the work. And I think that kind of was the start to the fire. Then we had something called Yellow Pages. So I would shift through it and like try to like get another job and slowly progress. And yeah, I just remember doing telemarketing. And then my cousin got me a job at Food Basics. And around the time I got the job, and then like I used my cashier, 1 month cashier experience and got another job at Canadian Tire. To this day, that was one of the best jobs because it was just so much fun and the people were amazing. I just loved it. And then, yeah, and all this while I was in school. And then I remember at 18, I was like, I want to go work at the bank. So I don't know. It was always this like dream and motive to work at the bank and work my way up. And so at 18, I was hired at one of the banks near my house at the time. And in 6 months was promoted to a supervisor role, which, I had a lot of customers coming in to file complaints or discuss matters. And they were like, you're the one that's going to help me. And, I think it just kind of sets you up. And this was all kind of things I didn't realize at the time of like training me to kind of deal with certain situations, difficult situations. I was the part-time supervisor, so I worked in the evenings when no other managers were around. So it was like, you got to figure it out. So I did that while doing school and then doing another retail job because while I was in university, I remember this, I got a letter from our student loans processing center saying that my parents make X amount of money and I don't qualify for OSAP. And I was like, excuse me? And like, I'm in school. Like, so it's, just things you didn't really need to deal with and you don't know what to do. And I'm thinking, man, I'm not going to my parents for this money. Like, I want to pay for it. And so, I ended up taking on another department store job just to kind of manage it. My dad helped me get like a temporary loan because I needed to pay it off a certain portion. And then I ended up working the two jobs to pay him back. So I think it was just where I'm going with this is it was just really instilled in me this like work hard and, you got to put in the work. And so that's kind of what led me to many different roles in different parts of the bank. I did move banks. I felt like I hit like a stagnant point and I felt like that, there was a little bit of racist situations and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to remove myself. And I had a really good support system. And so, yeah, I ended up moving and stayed at that bank for 15 years. So I was altogether over 20 years in the banking industry. And for out of the 13 of those years, I became a corporate trainer. And it was one of the best jobs because I would have these new hires and it was mixed in with like different levels of management for different courses. And you were able to see the immediate response that your like training had on these people and how you were training and like what that was doing for their lives. And I think I really enjoyed that time of like building with people, getting to know people. And I started understanding like I'm a people person and I love making positive impact. Like that was kind of there as well. And I think it kind of is tied in with like a little bit of upbringing from my dad of like always help, always, give to people you don't need, more than you need. Like if you don't need it and it's just sitting there, like donate it. Like it was just always instilled in us. And I think it was just kind of understanding what their, life had kind of given them and to give back. And so I just took it all and became this person. And then, I met my husband at one of my bank jobs and he was pursuing policing. We were really good friends and we didn't actually, have any intentions of getting together, but that's a story for later. But, that itself is a crazy story. But he became my best friend. And yeah, it was just looking back, if I hadn't done those jobs, like I would have never met him. And so we, eventually started dating, got together, got married. And then, yeah, while I was doing training, I got pregnant with my daughter. And that's when things really started to shift for me.
What were some challenges you had to face after your pregnancy?
I was doing this crazy drive to do my job, which was like an hour away from home. And I remember crying back to pick her up because, like, you would have to pick her up by 6 p.m. And I remember finishing my job at 5 p.m. and I was in Mississauga, which is one part of town, and I had to get to Markham, which is another part of town. And even with like the toll highway, if there was bad weather or an accident, things out of my control, like it was just very stressful. And my husband, Mark, at the time was working downtown. So it was like, I just remember crying, like praying that like I'd make it back to her in time. And things started really shifting for me. And I started asking myself, like maybe I need to do something else. And during this, I guess, transition is where, being pregnant as well, you kind of do a lot of self reflecting. I was starting to be more mindful of what I was eating, what I was putting on myself, cosmetics, beauty products. And I realized, there was not much options. We're talking almost 12 years ago. And, I remember like when she was born, even then, like trying to find like organic diapers, there was only one brand, organic wipes, there was only one brand. And like, it was crazy. Like when there was a sale, we would all rush into the store, and like me, my husband, my brother, and we'd like, cause you can only get X amount per limit. And it was just crazy. Like, and so it's really nice to see the so many options now that people have. So but that's basically how Ranu was born, which is my skincare line, out of that need and also the different skincare issues I went through. Pregnancy is such a beautiful journey, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Once it was like, I had my daughter and like life kind of went back to it being a little bit more in routine. I realized, okay, like how do I make my skin go back to what it was? Because I had like hyperpigmentation around my neck, around my mouth, and like it just wasn't feeling like myself. And I thought, okay, like, what do I do? So my mom kind of helped share recipes that her mom and her ancestors kind of passed along each other. And, I would do it and it would work. And she would be like, I told you this stuff works. And the last time that happened, I was 13 in my teenage years, and I didn't want to go to school with like yellow like stains on me. And so I'd be like, no, thank you. I don't want to do this. And just kind of, reintroducing those like ingredients and understanding you could utilize in certain ways by using Western technology and extracting the positives without like all the unnecessary part of it, became enjoyable. And so, I partnered up with an amazing chemist of ours, and that's how Ranu was born. And yeah, that's kind of been my journey. And that started almost 12 years ago.
What are some of the adjustments you and your husband had to make in your lives after becoming parents?
I have no beauty background. I did makeup because I always kind of knew wanted to do something on the side because, working a 9 to 5 wasn't enough money, to be real, to survive. And so I was kind of trying to figuring out what my side hustle would be. My husband was doing the same, and he fell on real estate and I fell on mortgages, and that kind of became our life. And I never really kind of let go of the beauty aspect of it. So did makeup for a bit. And then I realized, the 3 a.m. Hindu wedding call times was not for me because my daughter and my son were really young still. And I was like missing out on the weekends with them. And, I said, okay, this isn't it either. And so I just kind of continued working on my skincare regimen. And yeah, one thing led to another. And it I had a great support system. My brother-in-law, my sister-in-law kind of helped me with branding and just kind of how to put together a brand. Just like the, never-ending support from my husband, and then my brother, once he was done school, he kind of entered the picture with us, and it was costing us a lot of money, and we're like, okay, what are we going to do? And, there was another time where we went to LA and we realized meal prep was huge. And we came back and we built out our meal prep company, my husband, my brother, and I. And we were the third meal prep company in Toronto at the time. And so that did really well. And this was when like social media was brand new. So we were just kind of testing to see like how it would work and utilizing it and, kind of building out an organic following. We ended up selling the company. And so that was really our first taste of like running a business and like learning a lot about it and then selling it. Even that, like I remember like we'd go away with family for like a weekend and we would have to leave because one of our delivery days was Sunday. So we would like literally be like, okay, we got to go and leave Sunday morning. And, there was a lot of sacrifices that people may not have known about or see, but I think you got to give to get in some form. And so that was like a learning point for us there.
Tell us more about your skincare line.
When we did the skincare, we kind of, there was a lot of patience, and it kind of fell into different hands at different times. And eventually we got connected with the right marketing team that kind of helped us take us to the next level. When we did the skincare line, I originally wanted Mizu because I love Japanese skincare, but my brother-in-law so beautifully pointed out like, okay, Abira, because my middle name is Abira, my family calls me Abira. He was like, okay, yeah, I get it, but like, where's the connection and the story? And so I realized he was right. I was like, oh my God, you're right. So I remember we did like a brainstorming session with, all of us, and we came up with Saru. I really liked Saru. It meant extract in Tamil. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, let's do it. And we looked it up and it was great. And then, a year later, after we did a friends and family launch, a soft launch, just to kind of figure out some tweaks and stuff. And by this time, my brother had introduced his girlfriend at the time, who's his wife now, to the mix. And she's a crucial part to the story because she started doing the marketing with us. And that's where she really took off with it. And it kind of got in front of the right people. And then we realized, because that's when it was kind of picked up, that it was trademarked in the state of New York. And so we had spent all this money, all this time to build this brand, and we were kind of met with this crossroad of, what do we do? This is like going to be a speed bump for sure. And consulting with our attorneys, they were like, this change the name now. And so it is very difficult when you go through that much to build a brand, you fall in love with it, and then now all of a sudden you got to change the name. We had to do another brainstorming session and try to understand like a name that would mean something to us, and we fell on Ranu, which means heaven. And I think it spoke to us all because the stories that like my mom would share of these recipes, and I'm sure you're going to hear similar stories of that type from my community, back home. Like, that's just what it is. Like, everybody has a similar mask recipe. Like, when I talk to my friends that, every Sunday you get your hair oiled. It's a way of life. And so it really spoke to us, and we really loved how it came together. And so that's how Ranu came to be. That was a long answer, but that is my story.
Why did you start a podcast?
I wanted to do this podcast because I think it was in 2019. Yeah. I have always really kind of connected with stories of athletes. Growing up, my dad played soccer, very athletic. My mom was a track star. And so both of them were stars in their sports. And growing up, that's what it was. My brother and I, we were both put into sports. And so it's what I knew. My extended family, like everybody is into sports. And I think I just really loved hearing stories of like what these athletes would go through to come out on top. And like what they went through really inspired me. And I think that's kind of where it began for me. And I wanted to kind of do like a docu-series back then of really kind of taking them through their journeys. And I remember my brother and I were in LA right around March. We had met with a few people to discuss it, and everything came together so beautifully. We had set up some meetings before we went there, and we went there. It went well. Came back to Toronto. There was like noise a little bit about something called COVID, and we were kind of like, okay, what's this? It was new to us. We got back to Toronto, and literally like 3 days later, everything shut down. So we were like, okay. And it just changed things because, the NBA at the time eventually moved into the bubble. It just kind of changed the landscape of things. And yeah, it just kind of, I realized, okay, maybe it wasn't meant at the time. So I put it on pause and went about, growing the skincare brand. But I realized, like, to me, my morning routine is super important. And I make sure I do that no matter what, because when I don't, I am not dialed in to be the best version of myself. And so a lot of what I do in my morning routine is watch videos. I watch a lot of motivational videos. Sometimes I come across them and I'll save it. And so I do that in the morning to just really kind of wire myself a certain way. And I realized I was connecting with a lot of like the whys that people have. And I just kind of wanted to kind of explore a little bit more. And so my kids now both are into sports, and they idolize different people, and it just really resonated with me a lot. And I realized there's so much things out there that these kids watch. I would love for my kids to watch stories of people. And I know there's, other podcasts out there that are great. They do, different ones where they discuss different things. But I really wanted to touch on people's why. It's all about, the fire within and what keeps you going. Like, whether you're an athlete or an entrepreneur, a creator, anything, there's always this dream and ambition, and there's going to be, roadblocks to it. So it's really about what kept you going and like, what was your reason? And I feel like getting that side of people out to kind of share their story could change, even if it's one kid's life or one person's life, it's worth it, and I could say that for me because that's what I would do. And so I thought, why not? So it took a little bit of time because I'm an extremely private person, and I think that's just kind of because of what like I've been through. But I thought, you know what, I'm holding myself back, and I think I'm ready to share. And yeah, so that's my why. And so, I want to keep this as part of my legacy. And so one day, somebody that needs it can kind of watch back on one of these episodes and be like, wow, that like that's it. Like, I'm going through a tough time, especially with a lot of, the things that are happening in society these days, mental health. It's a tool they can turn to.
What is your why?
My why is, I think, ultimately, as people, you go through life to find yourself. You have your journey and your path, and there's the good, there's the bad, and there's the ups and the downs. And I think at the end of it, you kind of come out and you realize who you are as a person. And once you have that, then the next thing usually is, how can I help people? And how can I leave my impact? And I think, I don't know if it's because of where I'm at in my life stage. I've lost a lot of people really close to me in the last 2-3 years. It's been a really eye-opening experience. It's caused me to maybe think more about that, I kind of want to make sure that while I'm able, that I'm creating that impact now and not just waiting to when I get to that point.
What is your favorite food?
Favorite food is like dish or like in general. Italian for sure. I would have said pasta before, but it depends on my mood, but Italian for sure.
What is your favorite country?
To visit? Italy. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to retire there. I keep saying it.
What are your hobbies or favorite things to do?
I love to research. I don't know what it is, but I really love to research, whether it's health, cooking. I love reading, actually, so I should say that as well. I love historical romance novels. Yeah, that's been a thing since I was young, I think. Being a Leo, you always kind of, have this romantic idea. What other hobbies? I love hanging out with my kids and just doing like mom things, really. I love being a mom. I love taking them to their classes and just really being in an element with them. And it's usually my husband and I, and we just kind of chill out and just watch them. I just love that.
If you could be anywhere in the world, where would it be?
I would be with my kids, my husband, and my family for sure. Anywhere with them is good. Thank you for tuning in to This Is My Why with me. I'm looking forward to sharing other stories, and we have a really cool lineup of different individuals and just different stories. And yeah, it's going to be fun. Definitely looking forward to sharing.